Yo, what is going on, guys? My name is Tyler. I'm part of the FF Mediators here on the Face Off Sports Network. I'm back with my Week 10 tight end rankings, and while we finally got our long awaited return of a healthy Brock Bowers for the Raiders, we also did lose my sweet darling Tucker Kraft from the Green Bay Packers to an ACL injury. So let's dive into my rankings this week. We won't waste any time. We're going to jump right into my tier one here. I will point out our bye weeks this week are Cincinnati, Kansas City, Dallas, and Tennessee. So obviously, you're going to be missing Travis Kelsey and Jake Ferguson, as well as some other tight ends from those two teams. So if you don't see them in this list, that is why. Tier one, we have Trey McBride here. Um, Guys, he's still just as good as everybody else in this tier. Uh, Going up against Seattle this week, they're tied for the 21st best defense against tight ends. He had 5 receptions for 9 targets for 55 yards and a touchdown this past week. Jacoby is going to be starting again. They did place Kyler on the IR, so it's going to be Jacoby going forward at least for the next 4 weeks. He's had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, and they're going to be behind against the high-powered Seattle offense. So I look for Trey McBride to continue his dominance. Number two here, you could probably have these guys interchangeable, however you look at it. But the matchup preference, Bowers obviously had a star-studded week this past week with 12 catches for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. Finally healthy. He does take on Denver this coming week, so that is going to be a tough matchup as they are 12th against tight ends. We had Jacoby Myers traded, so could that impact the offense? Sure, it may get a little bit less efficient, but Bowers is obviously the one he was before, but now he's just competing with rookies, right? So we look forward to a healthy Brock Bowers keeping up what he did last week. You got George Kittle takes on the Rams this week, 11th. So they're the next defense up from Denver, who Bowers is playing. Now he's not had good weeks since he has came back, and I get that a lot of people are going to be hesitant to play him, even though he is an elite tight end. He only had 4 catches for 32 yards last week, so he's not killing you, but he's also not winning you weeks either, like he possibly could be. Purdy is still out. We're still waiting on word of when he will be back. Mac Jones, it seems like, is good to go. So hopefully we'll get to see another George Kittle game here soon that we are used to. And then the last one in the tier here is Tyler Warren. Boy, it was a big woof last week. I was really excited going against Pittsburgh. I thought great matchup. This could be a breakout game. Obviously, I mean, he's looked great the rest of the season, but this could really be a high-powered game for him. Boy, was I wrong. Daniel Jones and the Colts turned the ball over like 6 or 7 times at this point. It just was not a good game, and they still only lost by a touchdown. Now, with that being said, Warren did have 5 catches for 26 yards on 7 targets. So he was still being targeted, just didn't make a lot out of those targets. But neither could really the whole offense. They do take on Atlanta this week, the number one ranked defense against tight ends. I can't state that enough. You're getting ready to go up against a tough Atlanta Falcons team, especially against the tight end. Like I said, he was still targeted last week. He still got that elite usage. They use him on the goal line as a runner as well. So really and truthfully, you're still playing Tyler Warren. I still think he's a tier one tight end, even though some of the names in this next tier that we're going to show could actually, maybe perform better than some of these guys that we just talked about. With that being said, let's jump into tier two here. You'll see the rookie, Aronde Gadsden, has risen up rankings very quickly, and he is the top of my tier two here at number 5. They take on Pittsburgh. I don't think last week's Pittsburgh defense is what we're going to see going forward. So I think they are still a good matchup. They're still 30th against tight ends. Last week, Gadsden had 5 catches for 68 yards. He led the team in receiving yards last week. Now, yes, Joe Alt is out for the season. He did have surgery on his ankle. So That could hurt things. Now, they did make a trade for Trevor Penning. I think it's an underrated move that could help bolster that offensive line there. But all of that being said, it could lead to some short throws. Maybe that's more Keenan Allen. Maybe it's more Rondé Gaston. We don't really know. Let's just see how it plays out this coming week. Number 6, you've got Sam LaPorta taking on Washington, 28th ranked defense against tight end. Last week had 6 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. He has had a touchdown in 3 of the last 4 games. He's on a hot streak. Jared Goff is looking for him. So I think you play LaPorta. Yes, he's going to have to be involved early as Jaden Daniels is missing time. Um, we don't even know how long. And so Mariota will be the starting quarterback. So I look for Detroit to get out to a hot start, an early lead, and then kind of coast as we go there. So, with that being said, we'll go to Dallas Goedert. Now, I've got some interesting stats on Dallas Goedert, obviously coming back off of the bye, getting ready to take on Green Bay, who is also tied for 21st, like I said, with Seattle against tight ends. Interesting stat number 1, Dallas Goedert leads the NFL at the tight end position with 6 targets of over 20 yards downfield. So when it comes to being throwing the ball over 20 yards down the field, Dallas Goedert is the number 1 tight end for that, right? And so that's up there with the likes of Trey McBride, who has 5. Both of the Bears tight ends actually have 5 as well. And then you've got Gadsden with 4, Kincaid with 4, Bowers with 4, which Bowers being interesting, really playing only 2 healthy games. But Goddard, like I said, leading the league at tight end in that. He's also second in red zone fantasy points with 43.4. And that's due to his touchdowns, right? Like he has 6 touchdowns down in that area, down in the red zone. So, yes, that's where a lot of his points come from. But, he's being used there. You continue to play Dallas Goedert. Dalton Kincaid getting ready to take on Miami. He comes in at 8 for me. They are the 27th ranked defense against tight ends. 6 catches, 6 targets, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Miami allowed 2 touchdowns last week to Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews had 2 catches. I think he even had 22 yards or something. It was not a great stat line. We'll get to that in a little bit. But that being said, Kincaid finishes the tight end 3 against Kansas City last week, who was 4th best against tight ends. So I'm not super worried about Kincaid, especially going forward. This is his breakout year. I think he will continue to look good, especially in a Josh Allen-led offense. All of those receivers are kind of middling at this point. Keon has been non-existent for fantasy purposes. Shakir, sure, he kind of has some targets here and there, but if you look and you watch this Bills offense, they really like their tight ends. They like throwing it to Kincaid. They like Dawson Knox even still too. And they have James Cook, who is still dominating like crazy. So we keep riding with the Bills and Dalton Kincaid. Now let's move on to tier 3 here. You will see another name that went off last week, and he's the man on the graphic here, and that's Colston Loveland. Let's hit Kyle Pitts first. A lot of people are giving up on Kyle Pitts for some reason. I don't understand why. He's getting ready to take on Indy. Bad defense against tight ends. They're 29th, right? So one of the best matchups you can ask for. He had 7 targets last week, only 4 catches for 38 yards. But that being said, he's got 1 touchdown on the year. I think this offense is going to get better. Obviously, with Michael Penix at the helm, they look way better than when Kirk Cousins is playing. So he will stay there. He's on pace for 91 receiving yards, 91 receptions. And his career high is 68. That goes to show you he's being used, right, guys? So you continue to play Kyle Pitts, especially here in this tier. If you have him, especially in this range, or guys you're streaming over, you play Kyle Pitts. Did want to bring up Indy has allowed a touchdown to tight ends in the last 4 weeks. So I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I do think Kyle Pitts has a pretty good chance to get in the end zone this coming week. At 10, you've got Harold Fanning coming back off the bye as well. They're getting ready to take on the Jets, who are 20th against tight ends. Now, they did trade away Sauce Gardner to the Colts. They also traded away Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys. So that being said, I think this defense could get worse. And with that being said, I think I think Cleveland will probably come out win this game. He's got a stronger connection with Gabriel, with Dylan Gabriel out of the two tight ends. I mean, yes, Njoku is being targeted. There was some talk that maybe Njoku would be traded. He was not, and so I look for them to continue to both be used. But the last time they were on the field, uh, you had Fannin, who did have 8 targets in week 8. So continue to start Harold Fannin. I think he's a good upside throw for you. And then the man on the graphic here, Colson Loveland, right? So with Cole Kmet going out last week, Colson Loveland took over. He was the tight end 2 in week 9, had in the high 20s, I think it was like 28 fantasy points last week. That was his breakout game. And Dunze gave you a goose, right? So you're looking at a game in which there was like almost 90 points scored, right? And Dunze gave you a goose, and that's because Colson Loveland was open early and often, and he continued to get it done. He had 6 catches for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's getting ready to take on the Giants this coming week. Now, obviously, if Cole Kmet comes back, that's a little more concerning. I don't expect for that to happen. I think Colson Loveland will be a pretty good start this week, which is why he ranks here at number 11 for me. And then at rank number 12 here, the last of my tier 3 is Cade Otton. Getting ready to take on the New England Patriots, who are the 19th ranked defense against tight ends. He's coming off of a bye. So far right now, that offense is still so depleted that I think he's going to still be relevant, right? We don't know if Godwin's coming back yet. Bucky is up in the air. I don't think he's playing this week. They don't even really seem committed to say when he's coming back. Both of those guys, obviously, if they came back, it would hinder Otton a little bit, but it would also make the offense more efficient. So you're kind of in a catch-22 there. The short area targets, right? That's where he's going to thrive. And it's going to be a shootout, right? So they're getting ready. I mean, they're going to have to keep up with the Patriots, and the Patriots are, shockingly enough, one of the best offenses we've seen so far. So you play him, and especially even if Godwin and them are back, I still think you play him. He may move down just a slight touch, but at this point, I think you're in tight end purgatory once we start getting down into some of these names, especially once we get here into my tier 4. You will see I've got a long list here. I'm not going to read them all off for you. You can always pause the video if needed. I do want to talk about a few here. You've got Hunter Henry, who's on the other side of the ball, right? You're hoping for a touchdown. He's a tight end 9 on the season. Had 4 catches, 51 yards last week. I mean, like I said, if I expect this to be a shootout, you're hoping that he just falls in the end zone. I think it's very possible, especially when you get in these high-powered offenses like Buffalo, like Kansas City, like New England, you and the Colts, right? Like you want to play all those guys. They have a chance to get in every week. Skipping down to the man on the graphic here, Dalton Schultz. He's taking on Jacksonville this coming week, who are now the 31st ranked defense against tight ends after Brock Bowers absolutely destroyed the Jags last week. So shout out to Brock Bowers for doing that. Schultz had 6 catches for 77 yards last week. Honestly, I'm picking him up and starting him in a league where I lost Tucker Kraft. You'll notice that Luke Musgrave is not on this list. I want to see it first. I think the ball will be spread around a lot more to the likes of Christian Watson and some of like Romeo Dobbs and some of those guys before Musgrave will get heavily involved. Kraft was so good because of his yards after catch. And so I'm pivoting to Dalton Schultz, who's a little bit more of a safer floor play. Now, Stroud being out is concerning, but he looks good with Davis Mills in the game. So I'm willing to play Dalton Schultz here against the Jags. He's had 5 catches and 6 targets in 5 of his last 6 games. So all the 5s and 6s there, I think he's got a safe floor for you. At number 17, you got Mark Andrews. This was the guy I wanted to talk about earlier, getting ready to take on Minnesota. He had 2 catches on 3 targets for 22 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Do you remember what I said about the defense that he played? That is not a healthy stat line, and yet he still produced 2 touchdowns. I definitely think it is possible. It was a bad defense that he played. Looking at my notes here, I mean, what do you do? Like again, Miami, you just play the tight end on the other side, right? So um, you play them. I don't think that Mark Andrews is like some you have to play him. That's why he's down here in tier 4. He's in the streaming category. Um, he's been over 35 yards one time this year, just one. I think he had like 91 yards. All the rest of them, he's like in the high 20s or 30s. Really, that's the definition of boom bust, right? If he's in the end zone, great. If not, you're probably going to be disappointed. So let's pop the rankings back up here. Um, you'll see I've got David and Njoku down here. This is probably the farthest apart I've had the two tight ends in Cleveland so far. I just think it's due to the rapport that Fannin and Dylan Gabriel have over Njoku. We'll just continue to see how that develops. And then skipping down to 21, Juwan Johnson. He continues to get it done, and everybody continues to talk about how Taysom Hill and all of them are threatening his his workload at tight end. He had 3 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown last week. He's getting ready to take on Carolina, who's the 25th best against the tight ends. And they just traded Rashid Shaheed. So there goes your targets, or some more targets for you that are gonna be vacated. Shaheed was used quite a bit. He is, to tell you how good Juwan Johnson has been so far this year. He's 11 catches and 149 yards away from career highs. Yes, you heard me. 11 catches and 149 yards away from career highs, and we're in week 10. So this is the best year Juwan Johnson has had. He's on pace to easily break that. So barring some kind of catastrophic injury or some unforeseen change to the offense, I think he will break that. I think he will continue to have a good season. So please don't write Juwan Johnson off, especially this early after what he was doing early in the season. He was highly regarded in tight end rankings. He was in the top 5 for, I don't even know, the first 4 or 5 weeks, right? So just don't hesitate to play Juwan Johnson if you absolutely need him. And then the last guy that I want to talk about here is Zach Ertz. This is more of a caution against Zach Ertz. So he's getting ready to take on Detroit. I talked about it earlier. Jaden Daniels is out indefinitely. We don't know how long. Marcus Mariota is going to be in the game. And if you go back, I went back and looked at his games with Marcus Mariota just this year. And his best finish in any start of Marcus Mariota was tight end 24. He averages 4 targets in those games. So it's like he had 13 targets in 3 games that Mariota has started. He finished 24th twice as a tight end and 26th. So Zach Ertz is almost unplayable at this point, especially when Mariota is the quarterback. If Jaden Daniels is the quarterback, yes, obviously you play him just because they have that connection. But with Mariota in there, you don't play Zach Ertz unless you absolutely have to. And even then, I'm not thrilled about it this week. So let me know, are you willing to play Zach Ertz? Are any of these names? Do you think Njoku should be hired? Do you think Kittle should be down a tier because his performance hasn't been as great? Let me know, where you think these guys move. Obviously, bummed out about Tucker Kraft. Drop one in the comments below. Drop your F's in there. So it's going to be tough losing one of the top tight ends, but gaining one in Brock Bowers, right? If you manage to hold on to him, whether that be throughout his injury on an IR stint, or you picked him up off of waivers, a week or 2 ago, then congrats to you, because you probably just got a league winner out of that. So without anything else needing to be said, I do these every week. Obviously, if you need to, feel free to drop a comment. I will respond to as many as I can. I do have a busy schedule here the next day or 2, but I'll get back to them eventually. Drop a like, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't. We had a pretty high percentage of people that watch the video that aren't subscribed. So any and every subscription that you give us just helps the channel grow. We reach more people. And then without anything else, I will talk to you guys next week. Peace out, guys.